Okay, that's fine.
Good morning, everyone. Today is episode number 14. Today we're going to talk about Internet of Things for Business. One of the biggest things that we talk about in the last couple episodes, the Internet of Things and how it's evolving to the day-to-day lives, right? When you're seeing all this technology from outlets to light bulbs to refrigerators to printers, I mean, you name it. The Internet of Things is this big sea of devices. Right, and how do you use them and how do you protect them? Last week, we kind of did a little bit of an introduction, and thanks for Monty for taking over last week, and managing that because I was I was traveling to a funeral, and Monty stepped up and hosted the episode. So thank you, Monty, for doing that.
No problem. My honor.
Awesome. Let me give you first introduction. Monty is from Spy Gadget Rentals. Monty and I met on Blab few months ago, and I really liked his message, what he was talking about, and his knowledge when it came to security. So Monty is one of the main hosts here for the cybersecurity for you and your business. So Monty, would you like to do a little bit of an introduction for yourself?
Oh, yeah, okay, sure. We're the premier company in the industry, you guys. We have three distinguishing things that primarily separate us from the competition. We have lifetime guarantees and warranties on all the products, 24/7, 365 tech sales and customer support. We are perhaps the largest inventory of items. Not only can you buy, you guys, but you can rent as well. So come to us to help secure your businesses, your residents, vacation homes, automobiles from vandalism and theft, and find out whether or not there's infidelities, theft, thievery on the job, et cetera, and we'll see if we can match up a good solution to your problems.
Awesome. And my name is Brian Krieger. I run a company in Toronto, KNSS Consulting. I've run a marketing company since 2004. And over the last year and a half, we've started to see how our clients have been compromised. So it really got me diving deep into cybersecurity and what people need to do to protect themselves and protect their business. My website is www.knssconsulting.com. If you'd like to share out this blab, I really recommend it. We're going to give a lot of value in these blabs and these weekly episodes to help people protect themselves, their family members, and their business, their clients, their colleagues. Because what happens is the weakest part of your security is the one person that doesn't know what they're doing, doesn't know how to protect themselves, and that's the weakest link. So what I want you to do is to really kind of think about who's that person in your life that you know that really may not know. It's not their fault. It's just they're doing their business. They're building their leads. Maybe they're surfing on the internet because it's fun and they want to connect with people and socialize, but they're not understanding how to protect themselves. So that's why today we're going to talk about Internet of Things for Business. So Monty, what's your thoughts on the Internet of Things for Business?
Well, when I think of for business in general, as compared to consumers, as far as I'm concerned, the major distinction is business implies that we're looking at more valuable assets. We're looking at more potential damage. We're looking at more serious ramifications for not doing a good job. So yeah, whenever we speak in terms of the Internet of Things for business, we want to keep in mind that this is not just my smartphone in my pocket. It's not just some smoke detector on a wall called Next or something. The implications for getting it wrong could be devastating. It could be compromising the lives of 500 people in a hospital or 10,000 people in a federal agency or something. So I think it's a more serious issue, Brandon.
Okay. So let's kind of talk about like what the Internet of Things are for business. And what happens is when I was doing the research, getting ready for this blab, a lot of the things I was saying was the benefits. You don't hear a lot about what companies are talking about with the compromises and the security issues. It's not really widespread information. They're normally talking about the benefits. So companies will be creating new devices to connect with the Internet of Things. And I'm just going to post a link out here. If you guys are just watching this on another site, it's IoT. list.co, and it's a list of the Internet of Things devices, right? It's this big database of different devices that you can go check out, which is really good because, again, you kind of get an idea of what's available, what's out there. The next thing when you look at companies and what they're looking at doing is better sensors like geographic locators, gyro sensors, right? So for the Internet of Things, and you look at different devices, you look at like Fitbits and all the exercise devices, or even type of measuring tools. They're looking at how it rotates and how it would measure properly and even more accurately. And this comes down to measurements of, monitoring systems. So we're talking about, and Monty was bringing up like healthcare. So vital organs, respiratory systems, anything like that, how they can monitor more accurately. And this is part of the Internet of Things, of what they're looking at, is how it can connect to everything in the network and how it can relate and be more accurate. The better availability to access different systems. So, for example, like being able to access your lighting, your heating, your control systems, like you can monitor, and we'll use a doctor has an iPad and can look at his client's, heart rate, the blood pressure, all from the hospital as he's walking around. This is part of that concept of the Internet of Things. Better monitoring tools that can be accessed remotely, the health tools to help people monitor their vitals, better points of sale devices. So, for example, we have like Square in Canada. I don't know if you guys have that. I know we have PayPal has that little swipe that you have.
Yeah, we have Square, exactly. The credit card processing hardware.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
So the point of sale stuff now, which is
Exactly.
part of the remote, like the Internet of Things, is because now what happens, you can plug it into your iPhone. It's a dongle that plugs into the top of the microphone, and now you can swipe it, and now you can take a payment. Well, this is all part of the Internet of Things. Better inventory control, right? Devices like scanners, printers, security access control. So you kind of see like it's this broad spectrum of the Internet of Things and how companies are looking how to implement it to give it better accessibility. We talk about the CIA, confidentiality, data integrity, and availability. So CIA, they're looking at the availability, right? How to make it more accessible, how to give these benefits and these features. What happens is you see a lot of them not talking about, well, how do we secure that? And I think that's where our discussion is today is, these are great. I mean, these are all great benefits for companies to kind of look at and how to optimize their systems, their tools, their devices, their software. But now how do we secure them? And I see Ali saying business can be a target for hackers more than individual can be. And for sure, because, I mean, one thing I see, Ali, is that it's more financial gain. Right? Now, don't get me wrong, the access point is going to be the individual, right? Not the business as a whole. It's going to be an individual that they're going to breach somehow, right? They're going to compromise someone, especially when you look at social engineering. It's easier to socially engineer someone versus trying to go through a firewall or a router. It's easier to compromise an individual by sending them an email and having them click on a link, right? So that's where you look at the compromises of where's security, where's the easiest place to breach someone's network, company, whatever that may be. And it comes down to who's most vulnerable, right? And then we look at the analogy of vulnerability. Someone was telling me is like, look at an egg, right? And the shell of the egg. Well, the shell of the egg can only hold so much, so it's vulnerable if you drop something on it. Well, the vulnerability is that shell, right? Because once you break it, then there's your risk. Everything breaks open. So something to think about as we're talking about. So we're talking about all the benefits. So what do you think of the threats, right, for these devices? Like, I mean, we've heard about Fitbit being compromised.
You're breaking up just a little bit, Brandon. Your video's stuttering just a little bit for some reason. Yeah, the audio is fine. Just the video. I think the video was lagging a little bit.
Okay. So, like, what is your thoughts on all these devices? I mean, we're talking about like ransomware, for example, ransomware on these health systems. So how are businesses really going to look at protecting themselves when they're advertising and marketing all the benefits? They're working towards that.
Right.
They're not working towards.
I'm going to extrapolate on that. I want you to refresh, Brandon, come back because it's really stuttering now. There you go. Yeah, as far as I can tell, it looks like there's more at stake, definitely. And as far as ransomware is concerned, I want to also bring up the idea. I mentioned that we have a new form of ransomware that was just revealed, I think, over the weekend. Normally, with the ransomware, someone encrypts and locks your files. Okay, you want to try it again? Just make sure how you sound, Brent.
Can you see me okay?
It's a little bit stuttery. Yeah, unfortunately. We'll see if we can.
Well, yeah, just keep going.
Let's see here. Is it? Let me see, Allie. Allie, is it just me, or is Brandon okay? I just want to make sure it's not on my end. Let's see, what did he say? I know he's lagging from me. Okay, yeah. Let's try it again, Brandon. Okay, so you were asking about ransomware for businesses and how it's affecting business. Okay, I'm going to address that while you refresh and come back again, and we'll see if that makes a big difference here. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Over the weekend, Brandon, there was a new form of ransomware that came out. See, normally when you click on an email link or something like this, that executes a program that causes your files to be locked up, so that people can no longer access that data, right? And then the hackers want you to pay a fee to get that data back, right? So most companies start to take a look at educating employees and make sure that they don't click on those files and execute the program so they would have to pay the ransom. But I think over the weekend, Brandon, is interesting. Did you hear about the new form of ransomware that's basically more like a virus as compared to? Yeah, can you expound on that a little bit and make sure people understand that there's more that we need to be on the lookout for this new form of ransomware now?
So from what I heard about the ransomware is that now it's spreading like a virus. What happens is being shared out, right? So what happens is, I mean, you look at websites, you look at email, right? And it's taking a little bit of the code, right? And now it's expanding. So what they've done is like anywhere like spyware, or any type of like a virus that they put ransomware and they put them together now.
Okay.
So what happens is now it starts to evolve that it runs this code in the background. So of course you click on the link, right? The ransomware starts to, but on the back end, it's starting to expand their connection through your email list, your contact list, right? Through your cookies, and it's just sharing.
I just want to, maybe this is a little bit different, but from what I understand, Brandon, now, because this is more virus-like, you don't necessarily have to click on any links anymore.
So the one I heard about was the one now they've wrote more script into it, and that's the one I've heard is now they're starting to write a script to it on top of the ransomware, and now it's starting to propagate itself.
Okay.
Was there a different one?
Yeah, well, it seems like, when Cisco System talked about this new form of ransomware, I think it was some security person with Cisco, they were saying that now, I'm not sure how how it makes its way into the networks of the companies or whatever, but now you don't worry. So now you don't have to worry so much about clicking or not clicking a link that you don't notice. I mean, that you don't recognize.
Right.
Yeah. Now it seems like it does propagate more like a virus without you even having to click on a link.
Which, I mean, this is where we know this being in the security field. It's the evolution. They're going to find ways to expand it and to propagate it.
Okay. Yeah. Exactly. So it looks like if you, for instance, don't have the capability to do good scans, you may miss this particular form. That particular segment right there talks about without a human, without requiring human interaction.
Yeah, I'm going to take a look at that this week and see about that, because the one I heard was they're actually writing more code to it.
Oh, okay.
And now it's expanding populating through people's email lists and contacts and all that. So we're talking about like Facebook, their email list, all that. So what happens now? It starts to share out.
Okay, then that's more dangerous.
Oh, okay, of course.
Now going back to your earlier question before the lag issue, you're asking about more specifically businesses and I can't remember exactly what the direction you're going.
So the internet things. I mean, one thing we're talking about, like I was mentioning, was all the benefits. Got all these great benefits are coming out.
Oh, okay, right.
Now, how do we secure ourselves? I mean, what's the biggest thing that we need to start looking at? Because companies are looking at better detection, better geographics, better gyro detect, better sensors, all these great things are better. But now, as we know, as security expert, better means more vulnerability. So now
Right.
how do we protect ourselves?
Well, that's good. I think what you're addressing is something really, really critical. Mainly because, see, I've been doing some studies about again, transitioning from the consumer-based Internet of Things, going more into the business side of it. I think what we really need to do, Brandon, is take a look at what is the industry responsible for, and for me, that has a lot more to do with the software side of it. Now, as a consumer, me and you, we've been talking about try to buy right? Try to buy the products that have been checked and double checked, and the firmware hopefully is upgraded, and the manufacturer is communicating with you, trying to push out alerts, et cetera, et cetera. But unfortunately, see, you guys, you got to remember also, if I didn't build the product right to begin with, in other words, if the software is not secure, then what happens is the coding is faulty, right? So no matter what we do on our end as consumers and such, we can't address the fact that there's sloppy coding, or there's accidental, or there's intentional injections of malware, or just sloppy coding that allows hackers to exploit it. So and I want Brandon to chime in on this. What do we need to do, Brandon, as far as you're concerned, to make sure that people that industry understands? We need to make sure that we don't constantly push out bad products. Software is something that can be checked and double checked, and we need to make sure that we get that out there, and we get it out there correctly, hopefully the first time, so it can't be exploited, rather than try to patch it up after the fact.
And this is the ISO standards, and this is where they have to start meeting these standards of the ISO standards, that they have them, that there is a level of coding and hardening of that coding that is standard across the board, right? That what happens is everyone does it. Then there has to be evaluations, checking the code. I mean, when we look at, for example, the apps, Apple apps, right? Some of them are $4, some are $13, some are free.
Right.
You have a database of those applications. A lot of those are not checked, right? Apple doesn't have their due diligence of checking the security on it. They have certain kind of quality of, it doesn't meet a certain standard of functionality, accessibility. But when it comes to security, the kind of stringent testing is very limited, right? So things like that, like you're saying, we're having some sort of standard of applications that they're coded properly and they're hardened properly, and then they're going through an evaluation, right, to make sure they meet a certain standard, and then they're certified. Right? Having a certified body saying that it meets our standard, this security standard. Next is a level of data encryption, right? And then secure data transfer, right? Making sure, because a lot of this is connecting over a network. So that's why, the Internet of Things, it has an IP address, it's transferring data. So having some sort of level of encryption of the data that's being transferred over, and it's having some secure transfer. So it's TLS, because SSL is kind of an old technology, but TLS,
right?
That's going and it's transferring through from point A to point B, from the client to the server. So making sure that standard is met. And these are where the businesses have to have that listed in their specifications. Yeah, so we do this. We have this encryption. Our data is 128-bit, encrypted. Right? We have this TLS transfer. We do all that. So what happens is they meet those standards, so the consumer now is secure. Especially when we look at the devices where it's life-threatening, right? When we have hospitals, they're getting attacked by ransomware.
Right. Now, let me ask you this, because this is very good that you're bringing it up. Now, if we have independent testing of my code that me as Apple or Microsoft, and I just wrote some program, right, and it's tested, what do you think about the idea that some government agency, because according to what I understand, the Department of Homeland Security, for instance, has some very specific programs, the SWAMP program, software assurance marketplace, where I can take my coding and I can say, okay, here it is. Let's put it into this assurance program and subject it to rigorous testing. Then I come out with an endorsement by the DHS, for instance, software and technology part of it, and get some sort of label or something, so that when it goes on, when my software application now goes on the shelf, so to speak, you see those credentials. Do you think that would make a difference, or how? What do you think about having the DHS stamp of approval on there now?
I think it's okay, but you got to look at our government agencies, right? Our government agencies are not always doing the best for us. That's why I would say a third party, and have an independent company that does the testing, right? So they don't have any gains of any type. That's what they do. They test software, they harden it, they make sure, they run your reports, they let you know, here you go. Because government agents sometimes want to have, like we saw this when we talked about this earlier, FBI versus Apple. Sometimes they want to have back doors. Okay, well, yeah, we see you're really securing it, but now we want a back door because it's too secure, right?
Okay.
Now we can't get access to it. So that's why I'd rather have an independent, company that's doing it, that doesn't have any, nuggets that they want to kind of interject that for them, that we need access for security, for, government security, for, policing. We have a private company that does it. They're just trying to secure the software for the public, right? For any consumers. So that's my recommendation on that. Because again, when you look at government agencies, they need, of course, access. They need to do security, especially for policing and terrorism and all that. And I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if a company is looking to put an application, some software to market, it should be assessed by a third-party company that just reports on, here's where your software ranks, here's where there's the holes, and here's what you need to fix.
Okay, let me make sure I understand this, because this is very important. Now, you're saying because of the government's inability to give us the impression that they're going to be totally neutral, right? Not biased towards collecting data and looking for vulnerabilities that they're not going to disclose to us. You're saying that industry would probably rather have an independent, more private consortium, if you will, to take a look at the coding as compared to having that stamp. You wouldn't. Do you think that, for instance, some of the old school traditional corporations, would they also not feel as comfortable, or do you think that there's some very conservative traditional companies that may say, yeah, we don't mind, or has this gotten to the point where everyone is saying, look, I'm really not comfortable with just the government, quote unquote, endorsing or stamping this as okay? How far have we gone over in this other direction?
I think the psychology still lays there that, yes, we believe in our big fundamental systems, right? We believe in the government. We believe in, McAfee and antiviruses and all that. We believe that when they get certified, in our software or our server, our systems, that's a seal of approval. I think what happens, you're looking at the security field, and you're looking at, even independent, like big companies would rather not have the government completely involved into their systems. Okay. They'd rather have that third party that there's some liabilities, there's some legalities that they can turn on. Because imagine you try to sue the government because they released your data. I mean, that's a nightmare, right? And I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but I mean, if you had an independent company that has good contracts, legalities, and you've gone through your due diligence, and this is what they do, right? Because they have to protect it, and the life of their business is being secure and making sure that they're doing it. And then again, having this system set up that when they test your software, they delete it, right? And that's all set up through that process. The government, we don't know. They could say they could delete it, but they don't.
Exactly.
Right? A private company could do that as well, but again, you want to make sure that a private company wants to be a little bit more transparent, because they don't want to lose clients. Because if they hear one client says no, they don't delete your data, now they lose their whole client roster. Where the government's kind of like, whatever.
Okay, now since we're talking about independent testing, I think in the software community there is open source, right? Mm-hmm. Where if you're creating software and you want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to inspect their software, why don't we just go open source? Or do you think that may have a place as far as making sure that everyone can take a look at my vulnerabilities? I think Linux is one of those open source consortiums where everybody contributes, everybody looks at the coding, and you try to break it, and you try to find vulnerabilities, and what do you think about that?
We have bounty programs now that are starting to come out and be more active now, where companies are now giving a backdoor kind of system. I won't say access, but system. That now they say there's a bounty program. If you are a hacker and you can find, a 0-day attack, a vulnerability in the software, a cross-site scripting error, whatever that may be, guess what? We'll pay you X amount of dollars if you can find it. But you got to do, pen testing, where you got to go and test it. You got to capture the information. You got to approve a report, and you got to say what the fix is, and then you submit that.
Okay.
So I think we're getting there slowly with open source. But I think what happens is we got to be careful, and this is where it's that balance, that yin and yang.
Of course.
There's so many things that people will go out and they're doing it in ethical hacking, and they're trying to help the company. But then we have also our black hat hackers that want to do something malicious with that. So some things we can be open source. Some things we got to be mindful of. Is it really better to keep it private and have people do bounty programs and not keep the code open source? So,
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Speaking of bug programs or bounty programs, what would be some of the trade-offs? Why wouldn't I want every conceivable white or black hat hacker, for that matter, take a look at my software? Because if I have the Internet of Things going on for my business, I really do want to discover the vulnerabilities, right?
Well, let's talk about heart monitors, right?
Okay.
For things that we talked about for the hospitals and all that. So you look at heart monitors. Yes, you might want to have a bounty program. The company that's developing might want to have a bounty program. But if the hospital has a bounty program on that, and say a black hat hacker finds a vulnerability and now wants to do some malicious damage to it, some people in ICU and people in critical care now could be affected and could potentially die from that. So that's what I'm saying. Like, we got to be mindful of, the actual full entire risk, right?
Okay.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. Like, if you have a Fitbit or something like that where people are exercising and you want to have, open source, that's more, open. It's not going to harm anyone, right? If there's someone, if you find that the vulnerability and it gets public, at least they can patch it and do it. And it's, it's on a level. With heart monitors and, blood pressure and, respiratory systems and people's health, if that goes goes to the wrong side very quickly, we could have a lot of deaths. So that's why I think that's why it's the happy medium. We have to look at where is the real risk. If they have a bounty program for these monitors, is it going to cause more issues?
Okay. Well, I don't want to expound on it too much, but I'm thinking also if you maybe grant immunity, if someone says, look, I'm from another country, Eastern Europe or something, right? Mm-hmm. And I want them to take a look at the software or the operating system for my heart monitors and blood pressure things that are remotely controlled and monitored from your home. Maybe is there a way to grant immunity if just in case there's a...
But then we get into legalities. As we know, the governments and the law systems haven't really figured out how to prosecute and how to protect people across the world, the global market. The United States is trying to do it, figure out. Russia's trying to figure out. All these, countries are trying to figure it out, but they haven't yet. So yeah, having immunity might not be a bad thing if you have someone locally that's going to do it. But yeah, someone overseas, how are you going to deal with that? And Ali's bringing up a point, but if you have the option for people to modify the code and use it with your Internet of Products, there might be some versions that the user might love to use, but at the same time, you lose control of the security of your product. So that's why I'm saying, like, sometimes you should have bounty programs, and this is my recommendation, is you have bounty programs when you're developing the software, you're developing it out to a certain point of that, evolution of the development stage. So people are testing, they're hacking away, they're seeing what their vulnerabilities. And then what happens is once that's done, then you turn around and you look at how to put in a shell and how to secure that, and then take it to market.
Okay.
Versus, and companies have to do this now. This is what we see as bounty programs are ongoing. So, depending on how you want to protect your security, you might have, individuals that you consult with. This is where it's really kind of opening up the big discussion of, where do you go with this? Because again, it can be like that on Pandora's box. You open a bounty program and you keep getting hacked.
Okay, let's transition to something else that I read about. And this is, for me, this is kind of interesting. Now, I can be reactive, right?
Mhm.
I got this infrastructure with my company. I'm developing these products, but hackers are coming in and they're trying to wipe out my data and bring down my systems and such, right? What do you think about the idea, instead of me waiting to react to someone who's trying to compromise my systems, as compared to working with companies directly or indirectly, going after these hackers? Do you see there's any way that we can justify letting the hackers know that we're going to go after you directly or indirectly to send a message?
I think it's not a bad idea, but I think what happens is companies really have to look at pen testing, right? Penetration testing on their own. So they have to look at, and we call this blue team, red team. The blue team is the ones that set up the infrastructure. They set up the security, they harden the firewalls, your software, they do all that. They're the guys inside the gates, and they secure everything. Your red team is the ones that try to break the gates down, try to break everything down, try to break down the walls, find vulnerabilities and holes. You need to do that as a company in this day and age. You have to have both teams,
Oh,
right?
okay.
And if you have a red team that you've consulted, and you have that, and they have, their policies and their procedures, the memorandum of understanding, and they pen test it, they show you reports and they're ethical about it, right? When you open up to the market, right, like you're saying, then you just get hackers that are hacking away for, maybe a bounty program, or just maybe they're just hacking away for the sake of hacking away, right? Then what happens is we go after them. You just start this war. You start this internal battle, right? Because now I'm going to go after this hacker and I'm going to try to compromise him. And then another hacker that's even better, or a group comes out and now they hack you because now you're going after them. And now just this, this never-ending war. Well, we want to win the war and we want to get better at this. We consult with the hackers that want to be ethical. We get them in. We hire them into pen testing companies, and then we get them out there into the market and start doing pen testing on real companies and showing them what their vulnerabilities are. And they can help do better security. And then when there's a compromise comes up, yes, they can track it. They can follow up. They can know the method of how they got in. They can do the reports, and then they can hand it off to the legal people, the police, right? The law enforcement, and they can track it and go from there. I don't think companies need to look at how to hack back. Right?
Oh, okay.
I think we have to leave that to the legal system, because what happens is it's up to us as companies, right, to learn how to protect ourselves and be diligent about that. You look at, and I'll give you an example, you look at self-defense courses, and people take, to protect themselves in their bad areas. They constantly learn how to train in martial arts, and they do all that great stuff, but they don't take it for one day and then leave. They don't set it up and then just go. They keep going, they keep training. Well, this is no different from companies now in this day and age of technology, is we have to do this self-defense, pen testing constantly to make sure that we're up to certain standards. So that's kind of where I see that. And like I said, I don't disagree that hackers that are doing malicious hacking need to be prosecuted, but needs to be transferred from the companies to the police, right, or the law enforcement agencies.
Well, I'm glad that you clarified that, because I was concerned in terms of that very escalation,
Right.
where you have, you spend a lot of time and resources trying to hack and hack back and then counter, and it just goes on and on forever.
And then eventually what happens is the hacker that's sitting in his basement, or the group that's on Twitter that do this, they don't lose out either way. If they compromise you, right, you lose thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars trying to, rectify the hack and, resolve it as a company. And it could be, $30, $40, $50,000, where they're just spending time. They don't lose money. They're just spending time and hacking away. So if we're, as companies, trying to hack them back, what real gain are you getting?
Okay, now let's move on to this. I want your opinion on this as well. I was reading about open switches, because I think we heard about the Cisco's and the Intels and certain other corporations. They discovered that our government embedded a certain amount of coding in the firmware, so that when the products were manufactured, they actually left their factory floor with these security holes or vulnerabilities baked in, so to speak. And a number of companies have said, well, what if we have a consortium again, where we have not only Well, it's the equivalent of where you have software where everybody sees the code and they can look at it and analyze it. I think open switches implies that we could do the same thing in the hardware space, where you come out with a server, for instance, and I can actually see how you made it. I can actually look at the design, look at how you implemented it, and actually contribute to, find out whether or not it's put together, find out whether or not there's anything embedded that's not supposed to be there. What do you think about the idea of open switches?
See, I don't really agree with them, especially because, as we know, open switches or anything is a vulnerability. That's plain it. And it's just only a matter of time before it happens that someone finds that vulnerability, right? So anytime you leave a backdoor or a switch or anything along that line, what happens is we know at that point in time, there's going to be an issue, right? There's going to be an issue that some hacker is going to try to figure it out. I mean, I would mention this several blabs ago when they were talking about, I think it was in the Middle East, when they were compromising the PCL systems, which are the monitoring systems for the nuclear plants.
Oh, okay.
And they compromised it because they found a way to get in and change the flow of the monitoring tools. So then what happens is they were in. So, and that was just a vulnerability right off the shelf that no one knew about. And it came like, that massive compromise, right, that they found out. So I think what happens is when we have these back doors and switches that are there, I think it's a vulnerability that we need to look at that. And in my humble opinion, they shouldn't be there. If you're creating a device for the marketplace, it needs to be secure. That's it, right? It needs to be secure. There doesn't need to be a backdoor access. The company could have ways of getting access to it or, doing that, but it's hardened. It's administrative rights. There's something along that line that's high level privileges that they can do that. They can access it, but only the company can do that, right? And there's a way for them to administrate it, right? And something along that line. Versus having the government and this person, all these people have access to it in that scenario. I think it's one of those things that, it's leaving that vulnerability that we talk about when you and I have talked about several times, even in the house analogy. That's great to have a deadbolt and locks on my door and all that. But if I don't lock the back door and someone can get in, they're going to get in. It's just only a matter of time.
Okay, let me make sure I translate this into layman's terms so I can understand it. You're saying that if we have proprietary systems or if it's open, or which one, in your opinion, would probably be the better way to go?
I think both. I think a proprietary, when you look at that, it's individual. Like we'll talk about Cisco, right? When talking about Cisco routers and switches and all that, and it's their own infrastructure that they use their systems. They train you on their routers, their switches. They train you on that. It's their own kind of environment. That now you go in, you put that switch, that hub, that router into your company, and you're hoping you have those white pages and you secure it. It's a secure router, right? It's a secure switch that when you go in there, there's not this back door that you don't know about.
Exactly. Right. Okay.
Right. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Okay, that's cool. Now, this is kind of interesting that I ran across this as well. I'm a big fan of Bitcoin and the blockchain, right?
Yeah.
And if I had my way, the whole world would be one big, massive blockchain, and everything that you do, from getting married to executing contracts and such, would be done on the blockchain, right?
Right.
Because it's this ledger that transmits information and secures it and documents it and everything, and it can't be tampered with. Okay, and so this is interesting. Brandon, I found an article that talked about how we can use the blockchain to as a way of, again, going back to the Internet of Things analogy, we can use the blockchain to make absolutely sure that when we do transmit data, because I don't know if you guys know it or not, those people who are listening in, when you transmit data over the blockchain, it basically hashes that data and creates a copy that's not the actual data, but it's a hashed copy that represents that data. So I don't necessarily have to give you the actual data. I'm giving you a representation. It's hashed out, and that's sent over the internet. And what happens is the blockchain verifies when it was sent, whether or not it's been tampered with, and acknowledges receipt, and a few other things. But the idea is maybe it's not that important going forward to actually transmit the data itself, the actual data, but instead let's get a representation of the data, so that if it is compromised, you don't have the actual data. And
Right.
yeah, that seems to be where we're going in that particular space. Brandon, you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great concept that we start looking at how to mimic, mirror, right, the data, so it's not the actual data, and it's harder. I mean, they have to go through layers now of encrypting the data, or at least doing different levels of hacking to get to it. It's not like we've talked about before, is that you get in and there it is. There's the golden nugget. There's your treasure. It's layers of it, because even like you said, if they get hashes, it might be a piece of it. It might be a mirror of it, but it's not the actual, the actual data. So they have to try to find out the rest. Right. So I think it's a great idea. I think, I love to do a little bit more research and find out more about it and see how that can be incorporated into the mainstream, right, of data transferring, not just with Bitcoin, but, right across the board. Because I think what we're running into is we transfer so much data. I think give you an example of data transferring. 72 hours of video is transferred every hour on YouTube. So
Wow.
Or upload. Sorry, 72 hours are uploaded for every hour YouTube's alive and up and going. So you think that 72 hours of video is uploaded. That's crazy, right? And you look at the average video is probably around a gigabyte in space, right? So now you think about other data transfers, and we're transferring like to cloud services and financial information, client information, Word documents, Excel. I mean, you name it. All that data that's been out in the cloud, out in the internet, it's crazy. How much is out there? So I think what we have to look at is, like you're saying, is different ways of encrypting or transferring the data in a secure manner. So yeah, having in different hashes, yes, it's a great idea.
Okay, yeah, I think, see, this really plays into the Internet of Things for Business concept that we're referring to, because when it comes to infrastructure for the telecommunications, when it comes to the nuclear power industry, when it comes to the electricity grid and such, we want to make absolutely sure of that we're not giving up too much key information, as we let these systems interact with each other, because it's critical that information is sent back and forth. But at the same time, if we don't have to necessarily give away everything in the course of allowing all these Internet of Things devices and they can be smaller. Remember, guys, sometimes these devices are indeed smaller, and sometimes it's a power grid. Okay, it's the literal nuclear power facility somewhere that's put online, and now we try to control what's happening with that facility from another country, for instance. So sometimes you'll see a major difference in terms of the sizes of the in terms as far as how what these things are and how big or small they are.
Oh, exactly. I mean, that's what we were talking about before. It's as small as a little bit of a little sensor to
exactly
something that is, like you said, a refrigerator, or this PCL device that's running your nuclear power plant, right? Like, I mean, there's the Internet of Things is an amazing area, an amazing space for both development and evolution of technology, but also looking at protection and security. It's a great space for both. It's just now having the conversation about it, like we're doing today, is how to protect yourself as a business. And we'll get back to that. Let's get back to that point. If you're a business owner, what do you need to do? Right? And one of the things, like if you're developing hardware or software that is going to be an Internet of Things device, looking at how you're going to harden the software, right? The application, your coding, how are you going to harden it to protect it? How are you going to have a level of encryption for your data transfer? And the data transfer could be you're looking at connecting to a Wi-Fi. Are you using WPA2? Are you using a TLS type encryption for your data transferring from access point to access point? Right. So if it's a baby monitor, I'm using that as an example right now, but let's use real life situations here. Say it's a heart monitor, right? that heart monitor that's transferring that all that crucial data of that patient, is that data encrypted across the line that goes now to the host or the server that now is hosting that information back to a client where now he's running off an iPad? Is that data stream all encrypted? Right? What level? What's your level of authentication? Right? How do you secure that authentication to get access to it? Right? Where's the data stored? Right? If you are transferring data like that. So all these layers need to be thought about when you're looking at development and protecting. And then as a consumer, these are the things you should be asking, right? You should have this checklist as we're talking about this. Do you secure your software? Do you patch it? Like, when do you do it? Have you gone through, stringent, hardening testing? Have you done that? Yes. Okay. What level of encryption do you transfer your data? Okay, perfect. How do I log into the system and keep it secure? If they don't have this in their specs are laid out, you need to start asking right away. And even if they have it laid out, you need to test it on an offsite system and see how it works. And then I would recommend at the levels of companies that are going to use it, especially when we look at hospitals, there should be pen testing. So you put it into a test environment, and then you have pen testers come in and try to compromise it. Because that adds your layer of security on top of that, then now the company's done their due diligence, you've done your due diligence, because at the end of the day, if you're a hospital and I die in your hospital because you got compromised, you're held liable.
Okay, yeah, no, I think it's very important, you guys, that you understand that these are really critical items that we're discussing for your business. The viability of your business could be at stake. In the financial industry. There's been a few examples where, because there's an exchange called the New York Stock Exchange, which you've all heard of, and then you have the NASDAQ, and there's various other exchanges, right? But see, no one talks about the idea that a lot of those exchanges are run off software. And when that software is not critically tested for vulnerabilities, what could happen is, you go to update your systems, and then all of a sudden there's a vulnerability that shuts down a major exchange. So someone is going to lose a lot of money, because there's trillions of dollars that exchanges hands during the course of one business day when you're trading on these major exchanges. And there are some smaller companies that play a role in working with the bigger exchanges. And I've seen situations where, someone lost $200, $300, $400 million. And if that's all the money that you have, your total capitalization is 400 million. And it's gone because, again, a software glitch. Guess what? You're out of business. And believe it or not, I've seen companies literally go out of business as a result of not taking this seriously. So make sure you understand. Check with Brandon. Run your ideas across him. Get your your CTOs, your chief technology officers, and your CIOs, your chief information officers. Contact him. Find out what you need to do, what you should be looking at, because we're talking about now business infrastructure. We're talking about the critical operations and how to protect yourself, not only from liability, but from actual jeopardizing your business going forward.
And this is the thing that, it's a great point you bring out, Monty, is that we are doing this blab, and there's small to medium-sized companies in here. And if you get compromised as a small to medium-sized company, and you have client credit card information, you have personal identifiable information, and that gets out that you've been compromised, right? Because you had an Internet of Things devices, and that was the entry point, and now they turn around and they sue you, and you're liable for that. That small size or to medium-sized business can't be affected like that. You lose 20 to 30% of your client base, or you have to go through a lawsuit. Now what happens is you potentially could close down your business, right? And you could be in financial issues for years to come. Right. So it's so important. We're talking about, and Monty brought up a good point about banking and all that, but let's bring it down to the real user, like the real business owners that are probably watching this, right? Because the financial institutions, they have their security people and they have that. But the ones that are the small to medium-sized companies that might not consult with security people on a full-time basis, right? Might have a friend or a colleague that does it. You are the guys that we need to tell right now to start really looking into this, because a $5,000 pen test is nothing compared to a $50,000 lawsuit, $100,000 lawsuit, right? And this is where we're trying to really kind of instill with you guys is to do your due diligence now, Be safe now, protect yourself now, so you don't have to do the legal battle and the challenges later, right? And if you have everything that you're doing, and maybe even you have insurance and transference, because you've done all of your due diligence and you transfer some of the liability to an insurance company, at least you're protected, right? And I know even a lot of companies, when I talk about cybersecurity insurance, oh, I don't need that. That's never going to happen to me. And you know what? It's not if it's going to happen to you, it's when it's going to happen to you.
When it's going to happen. And,
right?
And if you don't think that this is serious as far as their dollar amounts are concerned, I just put some information in there. Mm-hmm. And there's a figure of $400 billion a year, and there's a figure of $500 billion. And see, that's associated with remediation. You know, what happens when you try to assess the damages? How long is my business going to be down, right? Mm-hmm. How much time and resources do I have to divert in addressing this problem, right? That's calculated into those numbers. So it's not just what did I lose from this particular hack, right? Or this compromise. It's what is this going to cost me as far as me disrupting my operations, pulling people from other critical areas of the business and focusing on fixing this problem and addressing it. Because as a practical example, when Sony was hacked, you know, lots of celebrity employee records, et cetera, went out the door, right? And
exactly.
Now we're finally we get into the point where someone's attaching dollar amounts because now the employees are finally suing Sony, right? So in addition to the public relations issue that they had to deal with, now they have to be concerned about the employees going forward and having a successful lawsuit, because that's what's happening right now. They're successfully going forward with this and saying, look, you were responsible for my records, but you didn't secure them. And so now I'm legally entitled to compensation. So that's what's happening with Sony. So this is very serious, you guys, and you want to get ahead of it and make sure that you're on top of it and plan a strategy, you know, just like backing up. Brandon talks a lot about backing up data. It's a strategy, right? You know, mm-hmm. How often and when should I back up, Brandon, for instance?
I mean, people should have a consistent backup going on every day, right? And minimum once a week, right? If you're not backing up your data, I mean, if you lose data for the week, I mean, it's a loss, but it's not a critical loss. I recommend people do at least a daily backup, an incremental backup daily, a full backup on Fridays or over the weekend, because then your systems can take that hit of backing up and be busy. And then making sure you have 3 types of backups. You have an on-site backup, an off-site backup, and maybe even a cloud service backup. So what happens is that, if any critical thing happens, tragedy happens, that you can always restore your business within a short period of time. But let's kind of go back to what you're saying. And I want people to understand right now who are watching this about the loss, the big numbers, $4 billion or $400 billion, $500 billion. Think of the lifetime span of a client. Right, and let's give you an average. Say a client you work with right now, maybe it's $100. Maybe let's use $500. $500 a month that client works with you, and every month that client gives you $500. Well, if you do those numbers, you have to make $6,000 a year, right? And that client keeps working with you. Well, that $6,000, right, is the lifetime of that client for that 1 year, and if it keeps expanding, well, if you lose that client. So if you want to invest $5,000 into a pen test, you are looking at that just one lifetime of a client. Well, now if you look at that over 20 clients, 30 clients, 40 clients, you can see how this would affect you as a business. Because a lot of people think of the one incident. Oh, the incident's only like, $500, $1,000. But you think of the lifetime span of a client that you potentially will lose, right? And the referrals that they might bring. So I'll give you an example here. Say I come and I work with you, and I work with you at $500, but I really like your product and your service. I refer 3 more people to you, right? Now you're making, $1,500 from just that myself, now times 12 months, and you can see how that expands very quickly to increase the profits of your business. Now what happens when you have an incident, you can see how fast that turns around, right? And it decreases your revenue and also affects your credibility in your business. So that's what we're saying right now. Do the due diligence right now. Do the work up front, just like you did a business plan, just like you're setting things up. Do that now. So what happens? You can have a successful business. You can have a successful growth. and not worry that these things are not in place, because when it does happen, you're secure, you're protected, or at least you have the due diligence systems in place to recover from it quickly, right? And then what happens is if there's a little bit of a data breach or whatever, you have the insurance, you have everything in place to protect yourself. Right? And that's what we're talking about.
Right. I think sooner or later we may even get to the point where we can say, look, I got a certification, I have an endorsement, I have some proof that we've just been evaluated, right? It's like when you go to these websites and you look and see, okay, this site has been scanned for viruses or something, or got an approval here and a certificate there. Look, this is no different for your business. Mm-hmm. If I come to you and I'm weighing the idea of doing business with you, company A and company B says, look, we've been working with this particular consortium, and they've been looking at how often we back up the integrity of our security operations, et cetera, and this is the data on it. It looks like it's a week or a month or something, as compared to this other company who can't make any claims as to whether or not they're even looking at the issues. I may decide, okay, maybe I'll go with company B. It's like that. The company A, because when you like when we go to restaurants in Los Angeles, you get a letter that's put on your window, right? It says A, and that means typically that you're very, very good at being clean and orderly and all this. And then mm-hmm. and then of course, if you see the restaurant with a D in their window, you probably conclude, well, maybe we should eat at that restaurant. Right. But look, no, the numbers, I'm being funny here, you guys, but look, the numbers over there pertaining to that Sony lawsuit, they don't look good, okay? Now, I'm not quite sure how much money you guys have to throw away, but I think employing Brandon and his company and having them take a look at your operations, I think it'd be a small fraction of what Sony is going to be paying out. And that's just the tip of the iceberg over there. So that's a real world example. And that was just approved probably a couple of days ago.
I know. And really hitting home that how this can affect you. And it's not just like data loss, data protection. I know we talked about, but it's the whole spectrum financially.
Right, exactly.
And it can affect your business when you're looking at public relations and future growth, right? Because if that company got compromised. I mean, let's use Ashley Madison. Exactly. How many people now are going to go on dating sites now more protected now, kind of going, okay, hold on, could I get compromised because of the Ashley Madison breach? And that's one company in the industry.
Yes.
Now imagine you are health and wellness, right? If a health and wellness company gets a massive, massive breach, how many health and wealth companies are now going to be scrutinized because, are they secure? I don't know if I should do that now. I don't know if I should work with them. And that's why if you do, like Monty's saying, did your due diligence, have some certifications that you've been tested, or even have just proof of you've been tested, or if you meet a certain standard, you now are getting a little bit more credibility, which will stand out above other people that just kind of go, it's not a big deal. And then when they get compromised, they're the ones going to be affected.
Right. So let's make absolutely sure, you guys, because I'm trying to quantify this as much as possible. A lot of times we talk about, this could happen, that may indeed affect you or something like this. But, we have a lot of statistics, that we can take a look at. And again, we're talking about the financial viability of your firm. We're talking about your public image, for instance. And this is all we have. If my public image is ruined to the point where no one wants to do business with my company because we're not securing data, and the onus is now on the small business. The banks, are telling the retailers of the world, look, you put this PIN and debit machines in there, and that'll shift some of the liability. But if you don't, you're going to absorb all of the liability. So make sure you understand, that we want to shift the liability. We want to make absolutely sure that we're compliant as much as possible, and above all, let's be a little bit more proactive when it comes to letting our clients, suppliers, and everyone know throughout the chain that we all have a stake in this, and we all have something to lose here.
Exactly. Now, Ali, I think you're the one last in this. I'm just kind of looking at people who are still left. Do you guys have any questions? Anyone that's watching? Ali, do you have any questions? I know you've been contributing. That's great. Thank you so much. Because right now we're coming on the last minute. And, Monty, first and foremost, thank you so much. I mean, this has been amazing. All the labs that we're doing. I mean, it's great. And we're providing great value, great information. I appreciate, everything that, you're bringing to the table and the information that you're sharing. I think, like you said before, and I agree with you, this is essential. Companies need to know it. Even if they watch this and then start the conversation, that to me is a leg up, because I mean, what I'm seeing in companies right now, they're not even having the conversation yet.
No,
they're not even talking. At least if these blabs, these live streams are starting the conversation that now people are talking about, I'm happy, because then now they start looking at it. And once you start looking at it, you're going to start taking action. So Monty, thank you so much. I mean, again, if you guys are looking at spy gadget rentals or spy gadgets, check out Monty. He's amazing. Make sure you follow him. He's at Monty Henry 1 on Twitter. So check him out. Again, it's amazing equipment. Monty has amazing information and knowledge about, the security industry and the security world. For myself, I've created a cybersecurity support system and to help you guys. All right. And it's very cost effective, because I know from small entrepreneurs, small business to medium business, really don't have that much money to invest right now to get started, and to consult with us to get started, to kind of get those systems in place. We made it very cost effective to help you out to get started. So make sure you share that out with your family members, your friends, your colleagues, your business partners, your vendors, your suppliers, because what happens is those are all your access points that can be breached. And I'll give you one example here before I end off. Home Depot, which is one of our contracting companies here that supplies, hardware and, tools and all that. They got compromised by a contractor that they were working with, that they gave access to the system, but they didn't do their due diligence to see if that person was secure. So the hacker got in through the contracting company,
yes,
which then compromised Home Depot.
Exactly.
And that goes to show you your weakest point of your security can potentially be the people that you're working with.
And the last thing that I want to put out there is cyber literacy. What does it mean to get the chief executive officer and the chief financial officer? Everyone, let's get all these people in the room. Let's make sure that they understand, look, we got this new paradigm that we're working in right now. And we all have to be as diligent, as aware, as focused as we were. Again, I always go back to the analogy of social media. Once upon a time, the higher ups who run corporate America didn't embrace social media, and then finally now they got it. Now it's a moot issue, right? They know what it means to be involved on Facebook and to get a LinkedIn account and to do work with Twitter and try out Snapchat. Okay, that's a given. So we need to make sure that we do the same thing with cyber literacy. Let's get everybody involved. Make sure they're speaking the language. Make sure they are understanding that we all have to communicate this from the top down. Because see, a lot of this, the policies and procedures, they come from the top down, and then the guys, the rank and file members, get the impression that the guys at the top are taking it seriously. So now the rank and file people, now they're taking it seriously, right? Because it's a mantra, it's the company mission, and it's communicated effectively. So you guys can borrow that term, and you send me 5 cents every time you use it, but go ahead and use it, and then we'll contribute it to Brandon and his blast. Make sure he's
a mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, this is great. So Monty, what do you want to cover next week? What do you want to talk about?
Let's see. Next week, okay, we've covered a lot of ground, cyber this and cyber that. That's a very good question. I'm almost at a loss in terms of while I think about it, what do you think?
One thing that's really kind of key for me, it's starting to come up with conversation, is security assessment, security awareness, right, and social engineering. Those are the three right now that are one of the most vulnerable points that I'm starting to see when more and more people just don't think about, like security awareness. They don't think of their security awareness as they're out and about, they're typing on their computer in Starbucks. They don't see people, shoulder surfing behind them and looking at, what they're typing in. They're just not aware because they got their head down, they're working away. So security awareness training, security assessments, like Those things are there, and social engineering, kind of the main topics that over the last probably month have been coming up more and more for me.
Yeah, I like the idea of focusing on social engineering, because I think, yeah, as you mentioned before, when we lock down these systems and we get the hardware taken care of, we get the software looked at and analyzed, we have that human vulnerability. So yeah, I think we probably should take a look at awareness and engineering and how humans actually play a role in this.
Okay, well, let's do that.
Right.
Okay, so next week, what we're going to cover, guys, make sure you share this out to everyone, all your families, because again, when it comes to social engineering, Monty's saying it, and we're both in agreement. It's one of those vulnerabilities that anyone can be hit with.
Right.
From someone going, hey, do you want to make an extra $1,000 this week? Click on this link. Boom, they're compromised, right? They click on the link and that's it. So let's kind of talk about social engineering, what it is, what are some of the compromises and how to protect yourself from it. Sound good, Monty?
Cool. Yeah. You guys share the link out with your company management people. Send it to them. Share it with everyone that makes these decisions on the upper level, so that we can make sure that everyone understands what Brandon is doing. He's making a tremendous effort, and it's a lot of valuable information in here. So let's circulate it and get it out there and increase the viewership. But at the same time, make sure that we understand the information has been recorded, and let's just get it out there and make everyone aware that we have a lot of good solutions, and he's making a tremendous effort in terms of making everyone aware of how big the problem is.
And cyber literacy, right? This is one of the key things that Monty's bringing up. Is this is one of the assets that we're developing here for cyber literacy, where people can go and get education.
Exactly.
Right? They can go and learn from all the topics we've done before and continue with us through this conversation of everything that's going on in the cybersecurity world.
Exactly. Right now it's free, but if he starts charging, don't say I told you so. At least the lab is anyway. All right.
Awesome. Well, thanks guys for coming out. Monty, thank you so much. I'll see you next week.
Sounds good. All right, you guys, it was a pleasure. Thanks for contributing and participating.